Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sean Emory. Every week we are examining something new, bringing you closer to companies, sectors, and themes. This recording should not be construed as a substitute for personalized individual advice from Avery and Company, or any guest on the show. This is for educational purposes only and not intended to make an offer or solicitation for any companies or securities mentioned. With that, let's get on with the episode. All right, Binny Gill, welcome to Inside Scoop.
Thanks, Sean. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so before I, truly pass it to you for your introduction, I wanted to highlight what we'll be covering today. Generative AI is all the rage. OpenAI, was founded in 2015, and really only until the last several months or quarters, we've seen kind of that breakthrough moment for AI. Today, what we want to cover, where we are today, how your team are building and creating value within this space, and how you're doing it. But I also think this is a good reminder that while the breakthrough moments, they come pretty fast. The progression towards these moments is, a really long time. If you go back to, 1958, where, Herbert Simon, the founder of Carnegie Mellon School of kind of Computer Science, he's quoted as saying something like, within 10 years, a digital computer will be the world's chess champion. And that was in like 1958. And then you have Marvin Minsky from MIT AI Laboratory. He's quoted in like the 70s saying, in 3 to 8 years, we'll have a machine with, general intelligence and the average human being. So, we're at this moment where we're seeing consumer facing products where, you and I, and, you're building products for that type of person where they can use it themselves.
Yeah.
But this is something, going decades. And there's a great deal of hype today. So, a lot of value having you on here. So today we have Binny Gill. He was the, CTO at Nutanix. He's the founder of Kognitos, which is creating value from the outside looking in. But, welcome, Binny. Let's kind of get your background if you can, and just tell us a little bit more of Kognitos.
Cool. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody viewing this podcast. Everybody's busy, and there's a lot of things to catch up on a daily basis. I started Kognitos 2 years ago. Our mission is to bring the power of controlling computers to everybody, democratize that through natural language. Everybody knows English. Everybody knows a natural language. Only 25 million people in the world know a computer language. And then that art has been something that, because only a few people can do it, it's creating an innovation bottleneck in our society. And as you can see, software developers are in a lot of demand. But at the same time, people who have the ideas, they depend on software developers. Last 70 years, what we have been seeing is we are training humans to be more educated in how to talk to a machine. Computer science schools and all that curriculum, teaching kids in school early. Now we are seeing the change with generative AI is that machines are now learning what the human means, right? So we will get into an era where humans don't have to learn the language of the machine. The machine has learned the language of the humans. And now suddenly innovation is in the hands of everybody, not just a few who know how to talk to a machine. So happy to be here and part of making that happen for the world in a safe way. There's a lot of talk about AI, is it safe or not? So we are bringing the capability of generative AI in a safe way to everybody around the world. My background prior to this, as you mentioned, I was at Nutanix working on many different things in the computer science stack, storage, networking, applications, cloud, and so on. Before that, IBM Research, working on caching algorithms and distributed storage systems. My education master's was in security for distributed systems like IoT and stuff. So I'm a technologist. I love to learn new tech, and AI is my new interest and hobby.
Cool. Pretty good hobby. Generative AI, just talk about like some of the value that you're creating there. I went through the site and, went through the product a little bit, and, it's pretty interesting. Again, we're consumerizing a lot of the technology that's out there. And again, I think like what you said is, instead of us learning the language, it's kind of the systems learning, the language that we communicate with.
Yes.
And essentially, the output being somewhere close to, what we're looking for. Just talk about Kognitos. It sounds like an interesting, solution product and a real use case around, using natural language, like how we communicate, right? And putting that into, embedding that in technology and having the output being what we want. So again, just talk about Kognitos and, what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, we're bringing the power of automation to the billion business users out there. Today, what happens is a business user says, I want to automate this thing in my business. They need to talk to a consultant or a developer who understands how to use a tool or program the computer to automate whatever process they have in mind. Now that computers are able to learn and understand what a human means in English, we are bringing that capability to everybody. We are focused on business processes in enterprises of all sizes, but mainly large enterprises. They have a lot of processes, document-heavy processes, and business logic where something comes over an email. I have to process that email, extract data from it, run some rules, and then update a database in the back end. There are tons of people doing things manually today, and stuff that people don't want to do. And that is what we are automating. The business user can explain in English, talk to Concierge, which is our product, and Concierge will say, okay, you want to do that, here is my suggested plan. And the plan would be in English, not in Python, and not in any fancy language, simple English. Business user can see and then negotiate. And so, no, actually, I meant this, or, oh, I actually use SAP, I don't use this other tool. And the automation plan is being written for you. So you don't need a developer. The good thing is, for the first time, now the human and machine is on the same page. Whatever the business user reads and understands, the machine can also read and understand and run it. So the English as code. So we've been through a journey where the industry has said, oh, Python is very complicated. Let me make it low code and no code and hide it behind menus. That sort of limited the power as well. What we are saying is, instead of hiding the code with no code, make it English, natural code. And English is code, no need to hide it, because the English will have the nuances that the business cares about, and everybody needs to understand that. So up-level computers to understand a natural language and also the nuances. The biggest innovation that we have done is exception handling and ambiguity resolution. Normally, even in the 60s and the 70s, people were saying, what's the best language for computers? It has to be English, but it was hard because it's ambiguous and you don't know, it could mean so many different things. But that's the power of English. Because it doesn't force you to learn all the nuances of the language, the system is smart enough to ask you a question and say, hey, what did you mean? There are two different things that I could do in response to what you said. Tell me which one, and learn what you really meant. So now the computer is coming back to you. Instead of saying syntax error or it's the developer's fault, it comes back to you, clarifies, and then knows exactly what to do and do it. And that's what we're unlocking for all the businesses.
Got it. And to simplify a little bit of the use case for everyone, that is, obviously you can go to the website and see what they're doing, but more importantly, I think it's just articulate some of the process. So historically, there's robotic process automation, right, which is just processing some sort of task. Now, what it sounds like, what you're doing here is it's overlaying that with general English language to then facilitate that task. So I think on your YouTube channel or anything like that, you had one simple task of trying to get a check, taking the information from the check and storing that information into a database of sorts, whether it's Excel or something more sophisticated out there. Now, on top of that, or before that happens, is it as simple as again, that's the innovation here essentially, is that English language prior to that, where you're saying, not please, but essentially, can you remove all the invoice numbers from all these checks and store that in my Excel file, and then it'll handle it for you, as opposed to I think if you have like UiPath or Automation Anywhere or any of these other companies that exist within workflows, you're building those workflows in some sort of mapping system, and then it's happening, little robots in the background that are doing it, but it's much more I'd say linear in the way it's doing it, as opposed to this is much more adaptive. Is that like a decent way to think about what you're building here?
Yeah, you did capture it. I'll point out a couple of things. One, you can say please. You don't have to avoid it. So you can say please, you can say thank you, and that's fine. That's the power of generative AI in the front. So
does it act differently? Does it act differently if you say please? No. Is it a little bit nicer to you?
No. So that's I'll talk about that aspect as well. Why not getting emotions into the automation is really important. But answering your question, first you're talking about what you want to do at a high level with Concierge, and Concierge looks at what you want to do and has a database of different automations and best practices that other customers have done and all that. It'll propose an automation for you. Hey, I think whatever you wanted can be broken down into these steps, and these are in English. And by the way, this is also a program that can run. And then you can say, oh, I don't want this, I don't want this. So you're negotiating there. And after that, you can say, okay, run it for me. Okay. So that's the first aspect where it's different from the traditional and legacy RPA vendors, and because the business user is in control for the first time. Today, what happens is business user goes and talks to an architect or a consultant, and they know how to run the tool. Business user doesn't know how to run the tool and all the different libraries that they have to interact with to get the thing done. So that's one thing. But the bigger thing is when an automation is running, normally things can fail because there is a surprise. The document that came in was missing something, or it's a new kind of vendor that you're processing, and so on, right? The automation space, there was a big hype in RPA. You might have been covering it some time ago, and then there was a lot of hope, and then despair. And the despair was we were not able to automate 90% of the things that we wished were automated. And those 90% were not automated because they have some corner cases that keep coming in. And whenever you have a traditional automation that hits a corner case, it will crash and burn and blame the developer. And now you have to figure out what went wrong. And there's a bot that's running, bot is unhealthy, somebody has to go fix it. It becomes like a debugging problem. It's a very complex problem. Business user cannot do it. And it becomes very expensive. So what has happened is people have selected the processes that don't have too many exceptions, very straightforward. And that's what has been automated using RPA tools. Now, the new era of using the power of generative AI to handle even the edge cases, the processes that had a lot of exception, different kind of scenarios. What we do is we have built an interpreter for the English language that has the ability of learning as it goes. So while it's executing your process, if there's something of surprise, just like a human, humans strive to succeed rather than crash and burn. So just like a human, it'll reach out to a business user and say, oh, this is the English program that I was running, and I'm on step number 4. This is something unusual. What do I do? Business user can say, oh, forget about this. I'll take care of it because this is extremely rare. Or the business user can say, oh, in this case, I forgot to mention you should use this business rule or do that. So you're teaching a program while it is running, and now it's become better. It's almost like an intern. First day, intern doesn't know much, and with every interaction with the manager, intern is getting better. And the language of education and teaching is English. So that's the biggest difference that we are bringing to the industry is exception handling on the job. What that does is it unlocks the remaining 90% of automation that should have been done, could have been done, but nobody did because it was too expensive. Now it's not expensive because all the corner cases you don't have to think up front. One of the biggest reasons why software development is such a acquired taste and art is because you are looking for humans who can think upfront everything that can fail. A good software developer is somebody says, I know all the 50 ways in which this can go wrong, and I'll write logic to handle all those 50. Most humans don't want to think that way. And we are very good at addressing things as they happen. There's no system out there other than Kognitos that can bring that kind of behavior to the business user. That's the fundamental distinction.
Yeah, no, that's pretty interesting. So it sounds like almost like, the trade-off here is sometimes, or it sounds like, and you can correct me, obviously, is you're shifting kind of that. So you have a use case or, tasks that happen that have a bunch of edge cases, and they can consistently go left and right in terms of what happens. Now, these RPA tools historically are building, straight lines down, a task that is simple with very little, deviation from, what it does. And, a lot of those other tasks, the 90% you're talking about, they have small deviations along the way. They can constantly change, and kind of generative AI or the concept around it is what can, widen the road and allow you to, take advantage of all or accomplish all these tasks using, traditional RPA methods along with, some of the stuff you're building. Now, I guess the question for me is to accomplish that 90%, the extra 90%, historically it's around, you would bring in consultants and they would consistently try to, mine for tasks that could be achieved. But in this case, you're taking consultants and moving it into, computing power, I guess, right? Computing resources. Right. Now, it leads to the question around a couple different things is, how expensive does this stuff become if you're constantly, repaving the road to, accomplish, all of these tasks, especially in an environment like this, so everyone's trying to automate as much things. Mm-hmm. Now the question is, does that AWS budget start to elevate pretty significantly? Anything you have around that? It's really around, ROI on this versus, traditional means. And then the opposite of that, or like the third, variable here is, you have consultants doing the work, then you have computing resources doing the work, or the employee doing the work. Mm-hmm. And, it's that three-pronged circle that I think everyone's trying to figure out still. But anything you can share around the compute intensity that's required for this stuff, and is it worth it? I'm assuming it is. Obviously, you have a whole company around this. So
yeah, absolutely. Moore's law makes machines and compute cheaper every year, and inflation makes humans more expensive every year, right? So So we are in the business of offloading humans from the manual work. So every year it becomes even more sense to offload what a human is doing. Humans will always become more expensive. Now, in terms of compute, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if a machine is doing what a human is doing, it's a far cheaper. We're talking about cents compared to dollars, right? I mean, so there's no comparison there, and compute costs are going down. Even GPT costs are going down. They were slashed twice in the last few months. Um, what's really important, Sean, is the latency that's also shrinking.
Mm.
If you have multiple humans in the loop of improving automation, humans are what slow things down. So the business user has an idea, hey, March 31st is done now. Next April 1st, I need to change my business process in my how I quote new sales. Now I have to talk to a consultant who did the automation. The consultant understands this and talks to a developer who will actually implement it. And then the developer has to show it back to the business user. Is this what you meant? That cycle takes many weeks today. But if you reduce the human players, there's no developer, there's no consultant. The business user is talking to Kognitos platform. The cycle is very fast. So you can test it out, your new automation in 5 minutes and see whether it does it or not. That's number one. Number two is the whether it's a black box or whether it's a white box. So for a business user, all automation is black box today because, it happens in some tool, which is very complicated. And that's why I had to hire a consultant, right? The business user cannot look at Python, cannot you look at what, say, somebody has implemented in an RPA tool. In our product, the business user can look at the actual code because it's in English. They are the person who actually approved that code. So we are basically left shifting this entire process of automation and removing all the barriers. Business user is in full control. And now, because of that, they are looking at automating even stuff they earlier thought they should not. Because what the thumb rule was, the best practice in the automation industry was, if you have a process you think you're going to change it over the next year, don't automate because it's a waste of effort. But that's not how the future is going to be. We are going towards an era where people will be doing ad hoc automation. You're writing apps on the fly, and that's what's happening. If you look at what's happening with ChatGPT and all the plugins and all that, is apps on the fly. Except you need them to run in a structured fashion where there is audit and logging of everything that's happened. You can go back in time and figure out what happened. Why did this enter in my database? That's all we do. We bring the safety around leveraging AI for enterprises.
Got it. ChatGPT, OpenAI. I would love your perspective on, everyone's leveraging them. How differentiated can, companies be, or where does it, how do these companies, at the end of the day, if one company's using ChatGPT and another, just talk about the internal workings from somebody that, historically or is, a CTO/founder here, how you think about, using a model that essentially everyone else is using, specifically today. And, that's today, but also, think 5-10 years from now, how do you think that shapes out in terms of, what models companies are using? Is this going to be like, an operating system that everyone's leveraging, or is this going to be, a centralized place, or is this going to be something more, diverse, I guess, or spread out across, multiple vendors where everyone's, creating their own models that are more native to them? Because again, the second part of that is really around, competitive edge from like a business perspective, and like who does actually have a competitive edge here. Obviously their scale and things like that, and network effects that could be at play, and or switching costs for something like, all your business processes running through, Kognitos. That's a pretty good defensibility. But if you could just talk about that, the centralized model today, where it's going to be, and then also, how companies can, build a competitive edge using similar models to others.
Right. So the analogy that I will give you is electricity. So all of this, large language models is like electricity being invented. And now that electricity will be applied everywhere. Whatever used to be done manually, now it will be electrified and, more efficient and so on and so forth. So the fact that you are using electricity is not your differentiation, right? I mean, everybody will be using electricity. It's like, what do you do with that electricity? That's interesting. Are you building a television, a microwave, a refrigerator? What are you doing? And then there'll be businesses built around that. In the end, you have to build value for your customer. So we are building value for the enterprise. In terms of using electricity, we need to understand that electricity is dangerous. You can cause your building to go on fire. And there will be some incidents of that will happen. What you need to be there for a good electrician, you need to be a good electrician who understands, this is how I put insulator, here is my fuse box. Create a safe system for businesses to use this new ChatGPT kind of electricity to run their business. And that is the main thing that we are providing. So we are not it's just a one piece of the puzzle. The real value is automation, where the business user is in full control. They need to have the steering wheel of this new era of mechanization and automation, right? There are multiple ways in direction where people are going. I just signed the open letter for pausing big AI yesterday. That is one approach where you say, we'll give API access to these GPT-5, right? I mean, there are some people who are happy to do that. Why? Because it's going to automate everything. But where is my control? So I don't know what will be in my control. There is no fuse box. It can just go out of whack, right? So that is one kind of thing, and I think that's a very dangerous direction for society to go in. We have now invented an engine that is creative. GPT, call it GPT. You have to use creativity at the right spots. Just like, while running a regular business, we have brainstorming meetings, which is about creativity. After you've decided, you just go and execute. You don't need to be creative after we've decided as a team. Same thing, we got to bring that creativity as one piece of the puzzle. There is creative AI, which in our system is concierge. It will come up with, hey, this is what's happened. This is the exception. I suggest this. The other one is the diligent AI, which we call the Kognitos brain, which is an engine that can run English as code. It is diligent. It'll go through your English and run it in an auditable fashion. So later on, you can go and check what happened. And if anything is wrong, you can instruct it like an intern, hey, next time do that, and it will diligently follow it. You have to bring both creativity and diligence to enterprises for it to be useful for enterprises. And that is our differentiation, that we have the only platform that has both the creative and the diligent in one, and we're using it at the right spot. Where is the line between intuition and logic, right? Or creativity and guesswork and hallucination versus diligent, auditable stuff? There is a line, and that's what we are helping define.
Got it. Makes sense. And talk about, obviously you've probably seen a lot here in this space. What are some of the cool stuff that you've seen, where, some of these big models are creating real value outside of, what you're doing? Maybe you're using something internally that essentially, is unlocking, different use cases for yourself. There's comments around, just simply code in terms of, building, apps and other scripts that are out there. Just in general, surveying the landscape, with a blank canvas. What are some exciting stuff that you've seen around generative AI and things around what OpenAI is building?
Yeah, what I tell everybody in my company is that you got to be using GPT-4, otherwise you're running and other people are on a horse, right? And it's not going to work out. My expectation is everybody is using this technology to accelerate what they're doing. And yeah, you get on the horse, you'll fall down once in a while. You're learning to be a good jockey, but be a good GPT-4 jockey, right? Everybody needs to be that, right? And the team that has the best jockeys will run the fastest and they'll win. So it's sort of we're applying it everywhere, right? We have a technical question, ask GPT-4. I mean, and understand this is still a wild horse. It may not do the right thing for you, but that's what you need to learn. You need to understand how this horse thinks so you can use it to your own advantage. I also tell my kids, go learn it. I mean, even though their school says, no, it's banned and all of that, I think this is the future. Everybody needs to be a good horse rider. And my hope and prayer is that our society keeps it at the horse level and doesn't allow it to become superhuman, because then it will be riding on us. But as long as it's a good horse, we all should be leveraging it. I'm seeing it being leverageable almost everywhere. Everything that we do, we're leveraging it.
Got it. How do you recommend, the average person that, isn't necessarily following this as closely, just begin to toy with it? How would you, any use cases that you think are, reasonable?
Like you want to have a vacation someplace, ask GPT-4, give your constraints and see what comes up. It works out decently well. We have our team meeting. We're going out to Japan. We asked for some suggestions. Did a pretty good job there. So just try to save time. I mean, don't use it if you're a doctor and you're going to treat a patient. But for stuff like entertainment fun or just a curious question, always check on the side. Go to Google. Make sure things are correct if you're really going to act on it. But it's a quick way of getting to some good insights with a grain of salt. Just do it.
Sure. Do you think Google, has to conform to this method of search?
Well, then I look for someplace else where I can get more, the diligent AI thing, like a place where I know there's no guesswork. I still need that, right? So Google still has a place, even though maybe they should have two ways, two kinds of answers. Like, sure, one is this GPT kind of answer, barred answer, which could be somewhat creative and guessing its way through. But then I also want the proof, like this is the website, here was the data, and let me confirm that. I call it the steering wheel. I want the steering wheel in this new era of automation or new era of AI. Don't take away my steering wheel. Humans don't like that. Humans don't like not to be in control. I mean, we want to be in control.
For sure. Yeah, and last area here I think is important is what a lot of people continue to harp on, and we've seen this decade after decade where something new comes in, and the question is around jobs.
Mhm.
And will this replace? Like for your personal opinion, do you think is this a replacement of jobs, or is this just a simply a readjustment of work?
Um, I would say it depends where we stop the development of AI. If it gets into the superhuman era, then I don't think humans have an answer there. Like, what was going to happen. But if we keep to, like, okay, we're creating AI that maybe is roughly similar to what a human does, I think it's an up leveling of our game. Everybody will act like a manager. Students in schools will act like the teacher. When we interview people, we will not interview for answers, we'll interview for the right questions. So that's the trend. Like, you're hiring managers all the time, and the managers are driving chat GPT or whatever to get the job done, right? So it's an up leveling of what we, the roles are going to be more of a review rather than do the work yourself. I feel it's going to be more taxing mentally for us because, a lot of the times thinking is when we like feel stressed, and when you're doing it, then you're sort of relaxed. Like, when you're making a table with, wood and, with tools, when you're doing it, you're relaxing, you're listening to music, you're not thinking much. But if all the mundane stuff is done by the machine, all you have to do is review the work and think about the new thing to do. I think it's going to get more taxing for us. Therefore, there will be some push towards creating a superhuman thing that will also do the thinking for us. At which point, all bets are off. But until then, I think we're going to get busier.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah, no, I heard that from someone else as well, which is a pretty fascinating concept. I'll end with this, which is, and I think I said that twice already, but 10 years from now, I know that's a long time. Google, Chat GPT, I guess that would be Bard, but Google in general, who wins the market share, right? I think today it's 99 to 1. Do you think this goes down, or again, this is a very generic question, but from your perspective of someone that's seen technology evolve and things come and go, and then also incumbents adapt and evolve and hold their their turf.
I feel it'll be different. It wouldn't matter which of these guys win. It's like electricity grid. It's like, okay, in the Pacific Coast we have PG&E. Yeah, but nobody talks about them. They're the electricity provider. Everybody, I don't care where it comes from. Um, the winners would be of a different kind. The winners would be the people who are using this electricity, not generating the electricity. So all the language models today, the best ones are with some few players in the market. I feel that it'll be democratized to a point where everybody has a good enough. Sure, somebody will have great, but in our society we may not need that great thing, right? I mean, so even cars, there's Honda, Toyota, all of those things, right? I mean, yeah, there are race cars, but who few people need it, right? So these big labs will have the race cars, but everything else is commoditized, and the winners would be of a different kind.
Sure.
They'll be solving real problems using this tech. It wouldn't matter. It'll actually commoditize quickly. We're already seeing that. The cost of Chat GPT went down. They slashed it 10x, and they're in a race. It should become free, I think, at some point.
Sure. Cool. Well, Binny Gill, we'll end there. Founder of Kognitos. Last thing is for you to just share, where people can learn more about yourself, Kognitos, what you're building, how you're building it, and then we'll end there.
Sure. We have a bunch of thoughts on our website, kognitos.com, Kognitos with a K. Please feel free to go there. Our main mission is to bring safe AI for humanity. We are seeing a big fork in the road right now where people can go down the road where you give AI access to APIs directly because there's no other better way of getting to efficiency. We are providing a better way where the human is in the middle. Human can see in English what's going to happen before it's given out to a machine to execute. Let's be on this journey. I want all the well wishes of everybody and make sure that we have a safer future for our children.
Powerful stuff. Binny Gill, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on Inside Scoop.
Thank you, Sean.